Gonna do a video walkthrough of the property. This is Sunday, May 31st, 2020. Around 7 p.m. Sun is setting behind the house. Got a fire pit out front with some Adirondack chairs that we put together. Out in front of the house we got a little garden here with some daylilies along the house. Some grape hyacinths up front. This plant, which I always forget how to pronounce it, Heuroshira, something like that, starting with H. And we got some hyacinths in a gradient of color, in like purple, pink, white in the middle. Some roses at the end, a big white rose bush, and a little red rose bush that I pruned back and is kind of small this year. A little teardrop garden, we call it, out front because it's in this teardrop of the driveway. We got some really pretty phlox, some sneezeweed flowering, some salvia on either side that we just planted this year. These, I think, alliums that make these poofy balls, some eccinecea that has gotten eaten by a groundhog in the past. Some phlox, creeping phlox coming up in the front. I caught 2 groundhogs this year. So far, moved them off the property. They've eaten a lot of stuff in the... Up here, got 2 elderberry bushes that are pretty small because they got eaten by deer. One elderberry there. In the middle we have some ramps that came up this spring and have gone back already. You can kind of see one right there still around. Another elderberry bush. I think I put a bloodroot in the middle there too. We got some Virginia creeper vining around back in these woods. In these woods out front. That's where I do the mushroom stuff. Found a chicken of the woods over here on a stump a year or 2 ago. Still got some in the fridge, I think, in the freezer. Under here is where I got a whole bunch of mushroom logs. These are mushroom logs that I plugged with my dad and my stepdad 2 years ago, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, and I've been getting mushrooms off of them for the past couple of years. In fact, here's a shiitake mushroom that I missed that is old and buggy now, but these gave us a decent amount of mushrooms, which was fun, but these I intend to take a lot better care of. Under here we've got a stack of shiitake, lion's mane, oyster mushrooms, and we've got some almond oyster at my friend's house on their way over soon, and some mushroom totems in the back. This tree fell over a couple weeks ago up near the street. It was leaning on the power wire, so I chopped it all up so that it wasn't leaning on the power wire at all. When I chopped this part, the stump fell back, but before, this was all leaning up and you could see underneath of it. And before that tree fell, I had a nice little path that came around the woods through here. I'm gonna clear this out again so that I got my path that goes through, all through the woods. Total, this property is about 2.8 acres. I think it's 2.78. Back to the mushroom logs. Found a whole bunch of glass buried right here that I dug out as much as I could. And a couple years ago did a little mushroom hunt one day in September, all through the woods and all over the property, and pulled out as many mushrooms as I could find. Probably found 25 different species of mushroom. Some edible, some honey mushroom, ringless honey, a whole bunch of cool stuff. There's a Coldframe that my dad built for us a couple years ago with some flowers and some seaberry potatoes. Tried to do some Virginia bluebells, and these, they didn't come up. Got some ashwaganda coming up. And a firewood pile. Hopefully a good year, at least a year's stock for next year. This is our annual garden area for now. It's fenced off and protected as much as possible. This is where we caught one of the groundhogs. And I got lettuce in this row. Groundhog munched a bunch of that lettuce. Got some Dietrich's wild broccoli robbed from Experimental Farm Network here. Had some regular broccoli here that got munched. Some peas along the fence here and there. Some spinach up front. Put tomatoes in this row. These are all radishes that are about ready to be pulled. Some marigolds up front. Boo. Some cabbage here that got munched by the groundhog. Some potatoes there that survived over the winter because I forgot that they were in there. Mixed in with some carrots and some volunteer tomatoes in here. And some strawberries that are just about ready to be picked. A lot of these are pretty much ready. Just giving them maybe one more day, but I might pick them later. Some tomatoes that didn't have a home yet. Didn't have any room for them in the ground. So I threw them in pots. This ramp up to the garden and firewood area my dad built for us as well. Which is really helpful for getting supplies up into the garden area and getting up in and out of the firewood area. This is Feverfew bush or plant herb. It's gonna flower pretty soon, and I forget if the flower or the leaf, but one part of that plant is supposed to be good for migraines. That's why I planted it, to try to help with my migraines. This is a goji berry plant that we've gotten goji berries off of in the past. This is an Edgeworthia, which is a really pretty smelling, smells like a hyacinth shrub that has gotten nibbled by, I think, deer in past years. And it's one of the first plants to flower in the spring, so it's really pretty. You got that at our local nursery, Triple Oaks in Franklinville, and really like that, so I'm glad that came back this year. And I think either this raspberry or this raspberry, one of the two is a golden raspberry that my friend Dana Herman gave to us. A fig that got munched just recently by either deer or one of those groundhogs that we caught. Some mullein that I transplanted here into the rocky compacted soil. A couple blueberries that are not doing so great. They didn't really get very well taken care of in the past. I think it got a little dry up here for them, but I'm glad to see that all 4 of these are still alive. Hopefully can be revived. You can see we got Stropharia mushrooms popping up all over throughout the garden. These are the Stropharia rugoso annulata garden giant mushroom that are edible, tasty. So we slice these up and have them with all kinds of different meals. Got some blackberries back here. One, another one right there that are pretty small because I think because they're on this hill here and I don't have anything irrigating this regularly unless I move the sprinkler. They just don't get enough water, I think. So they haven't gotten very big. We got elderberry here on the right. Bee balm or bergamot. Smells great right there. This is our asparagus area, which I have fenced off. But hopefully you can see the frilly asparagus in there. Got one that's pretty small, and we munched on a little bit of this year. But I'm letting most of it grow to get thicker and stronger roots. Got some milkweed over here for the butterflies growing around our haskap or honeyberry plants, which we got our first honeyberries off of these this year. And oh, nice, there's an example of one. Got a ripe honeyberry right there. And let me see if I can grab that. These weird kind of rectangular berries. They're weird shaped. Thought I saw another. Maybe not. Oh, I see a couple more over here. Normally I would just open up this fence and get in. But and I see a bunch in there. I'm gonna come back and get those. But these are honeyberries, which are kind of just like a little blueberry tasting thing. Yum. Tart, a little more tart than a blueberry, I'd say. And we have these stropharia mushrooms popping up all over the place back here. You can see one back in the grass there. And the asparagus. Got another honeyberry planted there, and another one there. Back here we got gooseberries, which you can see are getting big now. None are ripe yet, but those green balls are gooseberries. And I see some on this guy, that guy, and that guy. Yum. Back there, let's go this way. We have some cattail in this kind of, not really a creek, but wet area that is kind of a drainage ditch dug through this side of the property to have the water drain out to here. And we got cattail down in there, which is edible, has edible roots and shoots. Dog's bane growing back here. A lot of this we just let grow as meadow and mow what is useful for us to get to these wood chips. Had a local wood chip, or a local tree service drop off wood chips for us for a couple months, and got tons of wood chips for free. There's just a bunch of stumps in there as well that I gotta dig through, but got all the wood chips for all the gardens that we need. Our property goes back to the woods, and in the woods I think 5-10 feet there's blueberry shrubs along the back, and there's a trail in the woods that we see quads and dirt bikes riding through all the time, sometimes horses. Every time you go hiking back through there, though, pretty much guaranteed to find a tick on you. I usually wear some clothes that we've treated with permethrin to protect against the ticks. There's our next door neighbor June over there. Our shed. Some wood piles from trees that we've cut down. This wood pile is from the previous owner. This metal shed, which was for the previous owner's mini pigs, but we plan on turning into a chicken coop area. Right now it's just a metal shed with a side run and a little flap. So we're gonna turn this into a chicken coop. Got an apple tree back here that my uncle gave us, my aunt and uncle, a few years back. Pawpaw tree that got broken a year or two ago, so it's a little bit smaller than its sibling, which we got at the same time. So there's an elderberry bush back here, some stinging nettle, that we transplanted to try to get a little stinging nettle plant patch back here. Some frisbee golf targets. Another pawpaw tree. This is our bigger pawpaw tree. No flowers on it yet, but I think this is 5, 6, maybe 7 years old. Honeyberry plant behind it. Another apple tree. Elderberry that I have in this bucket protected because something kept munching it. This is a spice bush, native, that I planted a couple years ago but hasn't done super well, so I'm glad that it's still alive. Over here we've got some phlox, some creeping phlox that we carved out the tops of these stumps to make little planters, put in soil, and hopefully this phlox will grow and drape down the sides and flower and cover these stumps with flower totems. Got some thyme up front. Some different flowers in here and natives and other things that I've planted throughout the years. Some lily of the valley that we planted this year. I forget some of the things that we've planted in the middle. A bunch of natives, some scarlet flower over here. Another phlox totem here with some yellow thyme that we planted around it to hopefully fill in the base over the years. These are our mushroom totems made of large tree stumps that the neighbor gave us, oak tree stumps, that we layered different mushroom spawn in between the stumps. So we've got, I believe it is white oyster over here, golden oyster in the front, lion's mane on the right. I'll confirm that. Yeah, golden oyster in the middle, lion's mane on the right. White oyster on the left. So hopefully after 6 months we can take these trash bags off. They'll be inoculated, those stumps will be inoculated with those fungi, and in a year or two we'll have hopefully flushes of those mushrooms coming out from these stumps. So that'll be a pretty cool looking mushroom grow operation. Back here we've got a little composting area which we have not used a ton of because most of our composting goes to our worm pile or our worm bin under the deck. Over here we've got a couple trillium that we got at our local plant nursery, Triple Oaks. Another honeyberry. I believe that is Solomon's seal. Up front here there was some Dutchman's breeches that did not flower, but it has gone away for the year. And these trilliums had some flowers that were very pretty a couple weeks ago. And we got berries off of this honeyberry plant this year. We got some columbine flowers, which are just about done flowering, but they are really pretty flowers that kind of hang down like little bells, but they're really pretty. These all had flowers on them a week ago. This big elderberry bush, our biggest elderberry, which is just starting to flower. This had aphids all over it a couple days ago, and I tried to take care of that by spraying them off with a hose directly with soap water, getting them off with my hands as much as I could. Over here under the deck is kind of our perennial and tree nursery. Got some lemon trees. In the back you got a maple, maybe a grape. These are some honey locusts from the Hershey nursery in Downingtown, Pennsylvania. These are red flowered strawberries which got munched by the groundhog this year, and when we planted them in the ground, so we put them in pots and they came back. Some sunchokes in a pot that I want to get into the ground this year. Some black locust, bur oak or two there. some more black black walnut, sorry, not black locust. Black walnut, and a bunch of pawpaw babies in the front. So that's my tree nursery area right now. Got some pretty hanging planter flowers up there. But first, the basil, chives, these pretty flowers that are some kind of bulb. I don't know what they are called, but we planted them last year, or last year I think, and they flowered. They looked really cool. Some lavender that is about to flower. Excited about that. Hasn't flowered yet for us. Some nasturtium that we put in this year, and some chamomile, yarrow that has been here in the past. Tried to do echinacea in here, but it keeps getting munched. Tarragon, oregano, sage, some spearmint, which I don't really love the taste of. Some baby, what is that called? Rhubarb. Baby rhubarbs. Where else? Oh, we got some mint growing next to the garage. I felt that that was a safe place to put it since I can mow around it pretty easily and control it and keep it here, but I love mint, so does Lana, so gotta have a whole bunch of mint growing. So we got that patch started. Love the way it smells. This is Lana's Japanese garden area that we just started. We got, what is that flower? I forget. Peony flower up front, pink peony. A Japanese pine here. And a Japanese willow that has these really pretty white and pinkish leaves. So this is going to be a Japanese garden area. Got our axe throwing targets. Our cool art from Vast Burning Man project from 2011, I think. Local artist makes these bird houses that look like birds that are pretty cool. Real quick. Our bug hotel has mason bee homes filled up, so that's pretty cool. This water spigot doesn't work. I gotta dig that out and replace it so that we got better water back here. But eventually we're planning on doing rows of strawberries, rows of raspberries, pasture area where we can rotate chickens on pasture, maybe pigs, maybe goats in the future. Rotate them around as we do annual vegetables, pastured animals, and then a fallow area, and then rotate them every year. So we're growing in the area that the animals have tilled and fertilized the previous year, and then the animals go to a fallow pasture from the previous year. Got some barrels over here to make rain barrels out of. Would like to have rain barrel at each corner of the house, spigots, or a barrel on the corner of the deck up there so that it's elevated with spigot that can come down and water feed stuff on the south side of the house. This is our fire pit that we dug out last year to try to do in-ground style barbecue. Our buddy David made these awesome doors for us. That's a 3 feet into the ground dug fire pit that we can make really big fires, which is awesome because when it's right here, the fire and the smoke is not visible from the road, so no one's gonna come bother us. We got big fires even late at night. We got what do we got here? This used to be an azalea, now I put a lilac in here. A multi-season blooming lilac, surrounded by some bulbs, some flower bulbs. over underneath the deck. Kind of messy, but we got our pile of cardboard back there for sheet mulching. A screen where I screen out the worm compost over here. Let's see if we can find some worms real quick. They're deep in here. They're deep in this one. This one doesn't have much fresh compost. I gotta add some compost to that one. Got worms over here too in some of these, but anyway. If you've seen worms, you've seen worms. Lots of worm compost. Got these raspberries out here, which are thornless raspberries, and I love these because they make raspberries throughout the whole season. They'll start making raspberries soon, and I feel like I've picked raspberries off of these in December. They just keep going. It's awesome. And we had some planted over here as well, but I think the guy that comes and checks the meter here pushed him back so he could get to the meter easily, so gave him a little stepping spot and trying to keep the raspberries under control on that side. Got a couple more pawpaws back here, and I've had ramps come up underneath there that we planted. Spread out some Virginia bluebell seeds in this area. Haven't seen anything happen yet, but we just planted those seeds recently. Planted some fiddlehead ferns over here. There's one, but I don't do super well over here. They haven't spread a ton. There's some, and some ramps in that area too. Found a Juneberry tree, I think, back in here this year, which has some Juneberry that look like they might be infected with maybe the cedar apple rust fungus. Our next door neighbor has some cedars in the back, so that would make sense. But I was happily surprised to find a Juneberry or Amelanchier serviceberry tree. Came up right there without me putting it there. There's a little wood chip and compost area here where we spread some morel mushroom spawn, and with a tiny bit of wild morel that we found, made a sugar and morel slurry and spread out here. So hopefully maybe in a couple of years we'll see some morels coming up, who knows. And that's the house. I think I covered everything. It's the whole property. All 2.78 acres. Up here on the deck, we got a hanging plant with some strawberries. Down there we got our garden hose timer, so that the sprinkler goes off on set intervals. Down here we've got some, what are these things called?
The bottom ones?
Yeah.
Calla lilies.
Calla lilies. And some dahlias, I believe, on the sides. These were really pretty a couple weeks ago when they were in full bloom. A little frog king, or queen and king. The queen's over here with her flowers. The king guards his interesting sculpture. We got our garden tower that has some violets, some strawberries, some parsley that's really small, some purple ruffles basil that we planted this year, some other basil that we planted this year. This basil we planted, but then there was a late frost. Some green onions that we replanted from the supermarket. Some more strawberries coming in. Some oregano, I think. Whole bunch of flowering thyme that the insects and pollinators around here love. Some flat parsley. A little raspberry or strawberry here that's ready. What else? Some more strawberries. Try to do some dill down at the bottom, some dill seeds. And the idea with this thing is that I'm supposed to be able to do worm composting down that center pipe and push the worm compost through and get it out the bottom, but we don't really do that. We just use it as a vertical garden. Got some strawberries, had some holy basil in here in past years. Got some flowers, some annuals, some rosemary, a lemon tree, some aloe. Had an eccinecea in here that's not coming back. Some foxglove that needs a lot more space. Avocado tree. More annual flowers. Lilies coming in. These pretty annuals that we put together from the plant nursery. This is our compost bucket when we have our indoor compost and that gets full. We bring it out to here before bringing it down to the worms. And some lavender that somehow survived being in this hanging basket all winter and is coming back, so that's pretty cool. A big aloe over here and some more lilies and our extension cord going through the doggy door over to the smoker because for some reason when we plug it in out here it trips the GFCI circuit inside. GCFI, GFCI, something, and turns it off. So that's our deck garden. Hey, it's Wednesday, June 17th, and I want to do a little quick garden update. A couple things have changed in the past week or two. We got some chamomile flowering here, and our lavender is flowering for the first time here, so that's pretty exciting. We've got lots of lavender flowers that smell great. Over here, our Feverfew is doing really well. It's flowering. I started harvesting this to use the leaf and the flower as a tea to help with headaches and migraines, which I get. So hopefully that helps me. Got the fig there looking good. Blueberries, I just gave everybody some worm tea this morning that I had brewing. Mulched in the asparagus a little bit better. Pulled some weeds around the milkweed, which is about to flower. You can see we've got more honeyberry flowers coming in. So we'll have more honeyberries soon, or hascaps. And we'll have these milkweed flowering soon, and we've got some of a different milkweed down here. Our gooseberries are coming in strong, but I think deer are getting in here to eat them because it seems like every time I notice them getting nice and red and ripe, the next day I'm not finding any very ripe gooseberries. So hopefully the deer aren't getting them, but if they are, then I might not get many. Back here, planted some prickly pear cactus, New Jersey native prickly pear cactus, New Jersey's only native cactus. These grow pretty hardily, so I didn't have to do much to plant them, just loosen the soil a little bit and threw the root end in the ground, and they are edible. They flower, I think, for only one day at a time, and then after they flower, they make a nice red fruit that is edible. But they do have spines or globules or something like that, what they're called. So hopefully they'll spread out here. They like it real dry, and this is a real dry and sunny part of the yard. They did some cutting along the power lines, or some trimming. So behind the neighbor's house here, this all used to be overgrown with trees that were about 10 feet tall, and they all got trimmed out. Thankfully, they didn't really have to do anything to our yard because we keep it somewhat mowed, or at least tree-free for the time being. I think we're allowed to have trees back here that grow up to 15 feet tall, or shrubs up to 10 feet tall. So I can grow some crops back here eventually. I cleaned out some pallets and stuff that were on this side of the shed. Made some room. Broad forked it, loosened the soil, put in some sunchokes and some potatoes, two potato plants that are just grocery store, I think probably Yukon Gold potatoes, maybe Idaho, and some sunchokes, which are like a sunflower, so they will spread, and the root is edible of sunchokes. So this whole area will hopefully be full of yummy tubers and roots. And then as the sunchokes grow, there'll be pretty sunflowers, and then we'll be able to eat the roots if we'd like to. People say that they're like a prepper food or something like that because they're hard to get rid of, hard to dig them all out. So they'll be there forever, or for a while at least. Back here, my buddy Joe Keefer from Triple Oaks Plant Nursery in Franklinville brought over a bee box of his, and I'm starting to learn how to take care of the bees back here. And I think he's going to bring over another hive or two. He's also the one who gave me the prickly pear cactus. He had that growing on one of his properties, and now we got bees. So we're going to learn how to take care of the bees. So that's just a quick update on some things that have happened in the past week or two. So, catch you on the flip side.